Hello and welcome along. I'm going to be showing here a demonstration of how we might migrate a Google site into a SharePoint online site. So we're going to be taking an existing site inside a Google tenant and we're going to push it across. I'm going to create that site inside SharePoint and show you how we use the MigrationWiz tool to migrate everything across and make it active. I'm going to show you everything end to end. So even the project creation, all the rights we need to do on the source, and the destination and all the various things we need to do in the console, the migration itself, and then I'll show you what it looks like at the other end. So let's jump in and start what we need to do with the prerequisites. And to do that, I'm going to refer into the help desk article, which we will follow quite closely, and just to show you how that works so you can follow along when you do your own migration as well. Looking at the help center, it's actually pretty easy to find this one. We go to perform a migration here. And if we look down on the right-hand side under the Google Workspace migrations, you'll see this one here, Google Sites to SharePoint Sites Migration Guide. That's the one, and then we're straight into that. So a few important things to remember here and read through these to make sure that it is actually exactly what you want to do. But you can see here that the Google site needs to be configured with that public setting so the tool can access it and get what it needs out of it. And also must be in that new Google site format. We can't migrate classic Google sites with this tool. So that's obviously something to be aware of. And there's a few other limitations there, and you can obviously read through and decide if this migration is right for yourself. But what it does show in here is what items are migrated and obviously what happens across there. So that's good. So let's jump into that preparing a source environment and see what we need to do on the Google side. And really, as you can see here, it does have some prerequisites. Obviously, we need access to the Google Cloud Platform, the super admin account, and the like. So let's just go down here and we'll follow this one through. I'm going to do this with this in the background, but I'm going to show you on screen how we go through and do all of these items now. So obviously in the Google console now, and if I jump across to the sites here, you can see there's our site. They've got a very basic site here, which is this Help Center one. And if I go into that one, you can see I've got a tab open here. You can see it's pretty simple. It's got some headers, got some pictures, it's got a bit of a site layout in there, and some other things. So a very basic, generic sort of demo site, but it does lead into obviously how we do a migration with this. It does have different pages in there. So we have a documentation page, got a few files in there, and a file section too. So there's a bit of data to move across. So that's really what we're going to be bringing across here. But on the admin console there, you can see that what we need to do is jump into the console.cloud.google.com. And when we put that in, it'll take us to obviously the cloud page. And if you've done any other migrations with the tool beforehand, you might see under the project list here, you'll see quite a list of what you've been doing. In this case, I'm going to create a new project, and we'll call this one Sites to SharePoint, like that, and those are the defaults are good, and we'll create that, as I say, a nice new project there, and we will jump into that one from here once it's created. It doesn't take very long to create these projects. There we go, and we'll jump into that. I'm going to enable some of the APIs that we need to have this function perform, and we do that by across on the navigation menu. You've got APIs and services. We can look at the enabled APIs that are currently set there, but we really just need to go to the library and pick out the ones that we want to apply. So there are two that we're putting in there, which is the Google Drive and then the Google Calendar API. So if we put in here, Google Drive, you see it start to type it, it's going to come up there. We do that, grab it, and enable that API on this project. Once again, it happens pretty quickly. Once that one's in, we can go in and go back to that front screen. And this one here is a handy link just to go and enable some more. So we're going to take the Google Calendar as well. This one here, Calendar API, and enable that one too. And we can then check that they're both there. If we look at the enabled APIs, you can see that they will be listed down here. There's the calendar, there's the drive. Obviously we get default ones as well. We can leave those there. They're not causing us any trouble. And lastly, you will need to put in the admin SDK API as well, which I've just done on this one. You can see it's already in there, so I can just hit the manage if necessary. But you can see these three that we need to add in there, which includes that Google admin SDK API as well. So with those enabled, we now need to move on to the service account that we need to create for the Google tenant as well. So we do that off the menu here. We'll go and hit the IAM and admin, and you can see we've got one called service accounts, which is clearly the one we need. And we'll go and create a service account with this button up the top here. And I've just given it a generic name, sites to SBO, and that's good there, create and continue. These other ones are optional, but we do need to add that in. So we are going to add the owner role in there and continue that. And hit done down the bottom here. So that gives us this new service account. And we need to create the key, which is like the password that this service account is going to use. And we do that by under the actions here. You can see here we've got manage keys. So we'll do that. And we want to add a key, create a new one there. And we're going to use the JSON, which is obviously the recommended one, but that's the file that we'll then download. You can see if we do that, it will drop that file there, which is the file which we're going to put into the MigrationWiz console later. That is effectively your little password, your little key file that it needs. So we'll move on there. So the next step is we'll jump back with this arrow back to the service list, and we need to go across here to the actions, and we need to go to manage details. No, we don't actually. The next step here, we can actually grab the unique ID that we want from here. And we will grab that because we're going to use that in a moment in the other console. So we'll copy that out. But the other way to find that, if you need to, is on the main list here. You can actually just scroll across slightly and you can see there's that same reference number. And sometimes it's easier just to grab it from here and say copy to clipboard too. But the key thing is we need to grab that OAuth to client ID because we're going to assign it some more rights in terms of the scope in the other console. So let me show you how to do that. Back now into this main admin console here, we need to go across to security, and under access and data control, we're looking for the API controls, which is this one here. And underneath here, you'll find manage domain-wide delegation. That's the section we need to go into. And you'll find these are all the ones that we've had previous. All different migrations we've done on this tenant are listed here. Now, what we need to do here, though, is we're going to say add new, so we can add this new one in for this sites to SBO. So we hit add new, and that client ID is the item that we had in the clipboard from before. So if I paste that in, there's our reference, and we need to put these OAuth scopes in as well. Now just flick back to the help center just quickly because these are the scopes that we need to put in there, these 4. So I'm going to cut and paste each one of these separately into that scope, and then you can see how they get created inside this console. So we'll just put that across there, and I'll grab each one and copy the address there and paste that in. So let me just get those in quickly. See, entering those, we'll then hit the authorize button, and that will take those on board. You can see there now we have the sites to SBO, and there's the details accordingly. If we hit view details, it will show us what they are, and you can see that you've entered them correctly. Make sure you've got everything included, that you're missing like the last character or the start of it. They are obviously very important we get those right, but that looks good to me, so I think we can continue on. So really that is everything we need to do on the Google side to get things on. Obviously we're going to hang on to that JSON file because we'll put that into the console a little later, and that is obviously that key file which is going to give us access and bind everything in for what we've just done. But really I can close this one down now and we can look at the destination side. So I'm looking in the M365 console now, as you can see, and you know that we obviously use a service account generally inside that tenant to do that work. And I do have one already set up here, but if you don't have one, just create one. And if we go into that account, you can see at the moment it is a global admin. I'm going to add for this migration, I'm going to add the fact that they're a SharePoint admin as well. So we'll save that change. So that gives us the ability to write things into that SharePoint console, because what we do need to do is obviously do a little bit of work around the security of that service account and the back end there. But one of the key things is that the Google site has to have a home to go into. So what we do need to go into the SharePoint admin center now and look at the active sites. We're going to create a site for this Google site that we're moving across. So I'm going to do that, and there's obviously some important things we need to have here. Is we need to have them as a communication site. And for this one, we're actually just going to keep a nice blank one. We don't need any other data in there, so we'll keep that. Use that template, and we're going to give it a name. Now I'm just going to call this one, I will call it Help Center, because that's the name of the the Google site that we had. And we'll put a site owner. At the moment, I'm going to use that MigrationWiz account as the site owner. That's our migration account. And we'll hit next on that. I will just change my time zone there and let that create. And that just creates that foundation for us to put this data into. So with that done, you can see these are the steps I'm following through this article on the Help Center. Now I'm going to choose one of these two. We've got delegated authentication or the app-based authentication. You can use either or of those. I'm going to use app-based authentication for this particular example. So we're going to run through what needs to happen here. And you can see just briefly, we need to obviously have the SharePoint full control consent done for that application we're putting in. And we also have to have a MigrationWiz security group and put that user, which is that MigrationWiz service account that we're using, into that that group as well as. And then obviously go and create this project. So I'm going to go and do these things now and just show you what they look like. What I will note is I don't normally like to just click on this one. I do like to then right click there and copy that link and put that, as you can see here, into a nice fresh one here, like so. And of course, we are signed in as the admin there. And that will go ahead and ask about the permissions it wants to add, which we will then accept those. And that'll jump back to the main screen there like it's done. That shows us that has been done, and that's obviously the base screen that comes back afterwards. So we can close that one now. Now our next step is to create that security group. Now if we look at the groups in here, in this particular tenant, you'll notice I do already have one, and that's because I've been using this tool for other things. So there is a MigrationWiz service, grouping here, security group, and the service account is already a member of that, but that's obviously something you'd need to do. So create that MigrationWiz with no space in there. It is just MigrationWiz as one word as a security group, and put your service account that you're using into that group as well. So let me just summarize what we've done on the target side. We've created the site. We've given the MigrationWiz service account, that MigWiz account that we created. We've given that one, obviously, an admin on that site so we can get in there and do things. We've added the full control application in there. I can show you where that is, actually. Let me just do that very quickly now. If we go into the Entra, or the identity section here, what we'll notice is if we log in there, we'll have a look at the enterprise applications that are registered. Let's go in here, enterprise apps, and you'll see them all listed. If I look at the ones that are created more recently, you'll see we've got a few in here, but here is, if we look for the SharePoint, we have SharePoint full control and SharePoint delegated. You can see I've used those before, but that's where they live. So when you go in there, if you want to do any cleanup afterwards, once you're done with the migration, this is the one you want to be getting rid of. And to delete them, you go into the properties of it, and there's a delete button up the top here. That's how you can get rid of those. There's actually no delete on that front screen, just by the way. So you delete it through the properties page of the application itself. But that's where they live. If anybody is in your organization is asking about where that consent went to and what it's doing. In fact, if you wanted to go through and have a look at the permissions it's assigned there, you can see there's your list of exactly what it can do based on what you clicked on earlier. So that's good for an audit perspective, just to know exactly what it is actually doing in there. So let me just close that now and come back here. But then of course we've created that MigrationWiz security group, and we've put that MigrationWiz user, that service account I keep talking about, that's in that group as well. So that's obviously what we need to do. Now I'm going to go ahead and create this MigrationWiz project, and actually let's get this migration kicked off now. So in the main Create Project screen, we're going to be using the document project, and you can see on the notes here saying it's also possible to migrate site pages from Google Sites to Microsoft SharePoint sites. So this is the one we want to be doing. So we'll click there. And I'll select it, just put the project name in and the customer that we're doing this for. So we hit next step there, and that'll give us the source settings. So we need to know the endpoint. Now this is going to be what we select here, which will be, let's just put in Google site. I'm going to call this, actually we'll call this one Help Center because that's what it was. And the endpoint type is going to be Google Modern Sites here. Now, this is where that JSON file comes in. So I'm going to go ahead and select file and go to my downloads and grab that JSON file, like so. And it wants to know the super admin, just the username, which is my main account that lives in there. which is that mark@rocksmashers.com. So we hit add, and it will take that and go to the next step, which will let us set up this destination. So this will be the M365 site. So we'll hit new there, and we're going to give it a name, which will be, we'll just call this one Help Center SPO. And obviously it's going into SharePoint sites here. Now it wants to know the username and the password. This is coming back to that MigrationWiz@cozymouse.com. That is that service account that obviously we keep referring to, but that's where these details go in. So I'll put those in now. And just hit the add button and save and go to summary. And hit save project. There we go. Now, obviously, there's nothing in there. We've got to configure that. But the first thing I do, you might have noticed on the help article, there was an item we had to put in at the end, one of those advanced options. So I'm going to go in there now and go to advanced options. And you can see here under support, we've got to add that in. If I bring back that page so we can look at from the help center, you can see this line here, support option, which is use application permission equals 1. We need to copy that out. Let me just move that away and put that into here. And we will validate that first. And that should come back. That is good. And hit save there. Obviously, that's an important step if you're using the application permissions to have the data put into the destination. So to add the references in, we go to quick add. Which we're doing one there, and you can see it looks for the sites.google.com. It's looking for the public address to get to the site. Now, if you're not sure where that is, let me just drag this window back up for you, because we can see there's our help center. There's obviously our editing URL, which is in the console. What we want to do is click on this guy here, and we can get what the published site link is, which is this one. And if I say copy link, I can then put that away, and I can drop that into here. Now what we do want to do here is actually just go to drop off the home. We just want to have it as help center. Now a good way to test that this is going to work is if we grab this URL and copy it into a new tab here, and it comes up live like that, you can see that obviously it's going to be a correct URL. As I say, just a very quick little test to do, but it's quite handy to make sure that is going to work for you. Now to get the target URL, you can see on the SharePoint Admin Center here, there it is there, and we're just going to go and right click on that, and we'll say copy link address, and then just drop that one away, and we'll paste that into that section, and there is our URL that we need to have. So we'll hit save item and close there, and that should then drop into the main project window. Now before we just dive in and do a full migration on it, what you should always do is have the site here and go to start and do a verify credentials. And what that will do is it will confirm that everything is bound together, both on the source and the target, make sure all the links are correct and it can do what it needs to do and it has the right credentials to be able to do it. So we do that. I've hit the submit item here. That will come back in a few minutes time with a status on that. And so I'm going to pause and let that do it. I'll come back in a second once it's done. So let's come back with the completed verification with our tick, which means we are good to go with this migration now. So what we do with that is we click on the site here and we can say start a full migration. Now there's a couple of options down here which are important to note, and it's going to try and obviously do the site structure and site permission and access first. Recommendation is to let it do that and build the scaffolding for the site first, and then we run a second pass over the top which actually puts those other documents and permissions in there as well. So in this case I will do a 2-pass migration and show you how that works. So we're going to leave that one off for now and just hit the start migration. Obviously you can schedule it later at a certain time if you want it to run like that, but this particular one we're just going to hit start migration and get it through. And once again it sits in that submitted stage, so we'll come back when it's done and we'll have a look at what happens on the target side. That first pass looks like it's now completed, so I'm going to go ahead and do the second pass, do another full migration. And really what we just do with that is we just leave this one ticked on like that and we say start migration. There, simple as that. Goes back to that submitted stage, and we'll come back to this once it has completed that as well. Then I can show you what the target site actually looks like. Coming back in there, you can see it's completed. It's done its full migration, and you can see the amount of data it's copied. Not a lot, it's not a big site, but you can see there's the counts there that it has done. If we look at the details of the migration, you can see what it's actually been doing and what it's had to actually get to do this migration. You can see it's actually looked at some of these, the My Drive side. The reason it's done that is because it's got links back in there for the data itself. And you can see there, My Drive testing file, that is where the data actually lives. So it's managed to pull the data out of the My Drive, which is obviously where that data was stored, and it's transferred that across as well. And that's why you're going to see a whole load of directories which don't seemingly relate to the migration, and you can see that they don't. But of course, it's had to enumerate that structure in the worker here, and you can see it's done 0 pulled out of there because it had to pull some data to put into the site. Let me show you what it's done on the site here, and you can see there's the 2 files that it needed from that drive structure. So that's, as I say, when you see that in the migration logs, that's why it's done that. So let's go into the site and have a look at what it's actually done. So in the SharePoint Admin Center, I'm just going to go straight into here. We're going to have all the edit functions up there, obviously, because we are a publisher of the site. But you can see what it has done is it's created the site for us. And there's our help site. And if we go down here, you can see there's all those pictures and things that I was talking about that it's managed to bring across, which is good. If I go, and it obviously has all that data as well. And if I go back up here, you'll see if I look at documentation, this is where those testing files were. And it's actually these ones here that it's managed to pull through, and those were in that test document. And you can see there's some other documents as well that it's found. So you can see it's quite successfully grabbed those files and embedded them in that structure for us. And if we look at that other tab files there, you can see there's the files that we had in there as well. So really that becomes a successful site migration, taking that from, as I say, the Google sites into SharePoint Online. Remember that the makeup of the sites, it is quite different about how they're organized. It's going to do the absolute best efforts to get the data looking how it is. But of course, you are going to have to go in there afterwards and just have a look and make sure that it is exactly how you wanted it. You'll find that obviously the data's come across correctly. You just need to do probably a little bit of organization to make it so that the SharePoint side of the house is then happy to display that. But the key thing is that all your data and all the site layouts and everything is brought over. I'd like to point out one thing as well, that if you do run another full migration over the top, what it will do is it will actually take everything from the source and recopy it over to the target. So if you are making changes on this one, it's not going to look at the differences in the files. It is going to take everything from the Google site and make it into the SharePoint site. So if you start editing and then you do a migration over the top, bear in mind that those edits are going to go away. So that is an important factor if you were going to run a remigration of the site at any time. Well, with that done, that really does conclude what I wanted to show you today with the demonstration for the Google Sites into SharePoint Online. I do hope you found that helpful and useful, and please go ahead and get migrating.